Where did it all go wrong? How did we lose our colonies? Where did we start the story? Well, I guess we'll start from the beginning. Jamestown.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Coach Thornberry. I am a high school teacher in the U.S. state of Georgia. In the last video, we looked at mercantilism and the transatlantic trade and how that economic system was the backbone for the English colonies, or the 13 colonies that will later become the United States. Now we're going to do a deep dive into the 3 regions of the 13 colonies. The first region we'll look at is the Southern Colonies. The text of this standard. We are still under Standard 1. Compare and contrast the development of English settlements and colonization during the 17th century or the 1600s. Specifically, today we will explain the development of the Southern Colonies, including but not limited to reasons established, impact of location and place, relations with American Indians, and economic development. The 13 colonies can be divided into 3 distinct regions: the New England colonies, the Middle colonies, and the Southern colonies. Today we're looking at the Southern colonies. From north to south, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia make up the Southern colonies. First, we will look at Virginia. Virginia was the first permanent English colony in North America that was established. The first city established was Jamestown. The establishment of Jamestown was a business venture of London's Virginia Company, a joint stock company which raised capital for an expedition to America by selling shares of company stock to investors. That sounds pretty normal for today's corporate business world, but joint stock companies were relatively new and only seen in Western Europe at the time. The Virginia Company planned to send colonists to find gold and other valuable natural resources in America. On the eve of the Revolution, Virginia had stretched all the way to the Mississippi River. But after independence, Kentucky became an independent state, and after the Civil War, West Virginia will break away from Virginia, giving us our current day border. Back to the beginning. The Virginia Company was granted a royal charter by King James in 1606. The charter gave the Virginia Company the authority to govern and settle the new colony in the name of England. 104 settlers arrived to settle Jamestown in 1607. Diseases such as malaria and dysentery and a lack of leadership contributed to how unprepared the colonists were to sustain themselves through the first winter. Food and shelter had not been the priority for the wealth-seeking early colonists to Jamestown. Captain John Smith eventually took forceful control of the colony. His order, "He that will not work, will not eat," encouraged more farming and construction for better fortifications. The colonists who came to Virginia searching for gold would soon find a lucrative cash flow with the cash crop tobacco. Tobacco was one of those plants that was native to the Americas and had not been introduced to the Old World. It became very popular on the English market and made Virginia a viable colony. John Rolfe, who later married the American Indian Princess Pocahontas, arrived in Jamestown in 1610 from the Caribbean. Having survived the starving time of Jamestown's early years and secured financial importance of the colony with tobacco production, Virginia emerged as a crucial component of Britain's mercantilist system, with tobacco being one of the crucial raw materials that were imported from the New World to the Old World. The relationship between English settlers at Jamestown and the Native Americans was complex. Chief Powhatan was the principal leader of all the Powhatan tribes in the Chesapeake Bay region. Powhatan was wary of the Jamestown colonists, but maintained primarily a peaceful coexistence with the desperate Englishmen during their first few years in North America. The natives provided much-needed corn during the lean winter months, and there were only minor skirmishes between the colliding cultures in Virginia for the first few years. The increased number of settlers took greater amounts of land from the Powhatans. The death of Chief Powhatan, who had remained relatively peaceful with the English, also marked a change in the relationship Jamestown had with the region's Native Americans. Powhatan's brother, Opechancanough, came to power in 1618 and launched large attacks on the growing English colony, most notably the Jamestown Massacre of 1622. The next colony we will look at is Maryland. In 1632, King Charles I granted Lord Baltimore property rights to land in the Chesapeake Bay. Maryland was settled as a haven for Catholics who were persecuted by Protestants, but with the tobacco boom, Maryland's Catholics became outnumbered in their own colony. To preserve the rights of Catholics, Maryland passed the Act of Toleration in the Maryland Legislative Assembly. This colonial law guaranteed religious freedom in Maryland to all Christians, Protestant and Catholic. It is an early cornerstone of religious freedom in the United States. Next, we're going to look at the 2 colonies of North and South Carolina The Carolina colony was originally a single proprietary colony located between Virginia and Spanish Florida, given in 1663 to 8 nobles who had helped Charles II reclaim the monarchy from Oliver Cromwell and the restoration of the crown. Long story short, the colony was given to some of the king's friends who helped the king reach power. The 8 nobles who were given Carolina were referred to as Lord Proprietors of the colony. The southern coast of Carolina became a producer of rice and indigo on large commercial plantations. Charleston became a major transportation hub for exporting valuable cash crops. The Carolina colony was officially divided in 1712 after the wide-ranging single colony proved too difficult to manage. South Carolina, with its valuable Charleston-based resources, was then taken from the proprietors and made a royal colony in 1719. Later, in 1729, the proprietors sold their shares of the North Carolina colony, making it also a crown colony. North Carolina would reach its modern-day border after the American Revolution and the founding of Tennessee. The last southern colony we will look at is Georgia. Georgia was the last English colony established in North America prior to the Revolutionary War. In 1732, Georgia was created as a defensive buffer between Spanish Florida and the valuable South Carolina plantations and the port of Charleston. Georgia was also used to reduce the number of debtors in England by sending many of them to the new Georgia colony for a fresh start to provide defense for South Carolina. General James Oglethorpe and 20 trustees who were given the charter for Georgia regulated the colony. Landholdings were limited in size to small farms, slavery was banned, and alcohol was prohibited. Strict limits on landholdings were meant to prevent the wide economic stratification that developed in the Carolina colonies. After the original wave of settlers established the colony at Savannah under Oglethorpe and the trustees, greater resistance grew over the strict rules over time. The Georgia colonists wanted greater autonomy and local legislative participation that settlers of the other 12 colonies enjoyed. By the 1740s, the trustees had given in to most of the Georgia colonist demands. In the 1770s, when we get to the Revolutionary period, Georgia is just like all the other colonies with large plantations and legal slavery. The location of the southern colonies with the region's rich soil and long growing seasons fostered strong agricultural producing colonies. The economic development of the southern colonies reflects the fall line. The fall line is a geographic boundary marking the prehistoric shoreline of the Atlantic Ocean, as well as the division between the coastal plain and the Piedmont region. Deep rivers in a large coastal plain meant that inland farmers were able to ship tobacco, indigo, corn, and rice directly from their farms to European markets. Subsistence farmers tended to live north of the fall line in the Piedmont. These farmers grew what the family needed, with small cash crop on the side being used to purchase or barter goods. Commercial farms tended to develop south of the fall line and grew predominantly high-yield, labor-intensive cash crops. As a result, slave labor was more common south of the fall line, while less common north of the fall line. Once large-scale cash crops of tobacco, indigo, corn, and rice proved highly profitable in the mercantilist system, more colonists arrived seeking economic opportunity. The growing English population in the southern colonies required more American Indian land for crop cultivation. This fueled tension between the two civilizations that will last past the Revolution of 1776. Interestingly, as we move towards the Revolution, the southern colonies will prove to be more loyal than the other two regions, though loyalty will vary greatly from citizen to citizen.
If you think those southern colonists are a rebellious lot, wait until we see the lick spittles from Boston and the New England colonies next time.
Oh yeah, I checked. British accent's fine for me, as long as I never get mad if a British person makes fun of my southern Appalachian dialect. Truth is, we're used to it. And next time, we really are going to get in the car and go to Boston. And there's another accent I can go after.